Welcome to the Mom and Sons Yucca Root Podcast. I'm Billy, and this is my mom.
Hi.
Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about bullying and whatnot, but first we wanted to talk about why we started this podcast and where our inspiration came from.
So, Billy and I have talked about, in quarantine, wanting to do something that we could share, our thoughts. I'm not a therapist. Billy's not an expert. We're not giving advice, but just our thoughts on a mother-son perspective on things. And you get two sides to it, and even a third side of us together. And maybe if that helps someone, great. And there could be a little comedy relief in there too. So that's what we're here for. That's what these episodes are all going to be geared towards.
So, why'd we decide yucca roots?
So we had a yucca root plant growing in our backyard that we hated and we wanted to cut out. And we cut it out and it came back. And we cut it out and it came back. And we'd cut the roots out and it always came back. And so then we had, the idea that these roots are supposed to be worth money so we could sell them. And so Billy was going to sell them and keep all the profits. And then we realized that was not profitable and we never sold any yucca root plants. But it's continuing to grow out back even to this day.
But we also learned that, and it kind of came up with a terminology I felt like in my head and her head too, that when we cut out those yucca roots and they kept growing back, it reminded me a little bit of my experience when I was little. There's always those cases of bullying that happen. And it made me realize that I learned there and back then that I just had to keep bouncing back. And, did you ever have anything like that when you were little?
Oh, yeah. I was bullied as a little kid. I can remember one experience where some kids in the after school program called me Miss Piggy and said I was fat and I was a chubby kid. And I remember in that case, going home every day upset and finally telling my mom, this is what's happening. And so my mom's response was to come in and sit down and actually talk to those kids, which they never bothered me again. But those little instances like that one was the one I remember the most. Mm-hmm. And then Billy's had experiences.
She's been here for me too, there was always, I always thought it was friendly banter, and eventually it would, devolve into singing songs or something about me and whatever weird ways that happened. And I'd always go to her asking for help, and she'd always be there to help out, go in, talk with whoever ran the after school program that day or whatever. And even you always hear about how bullying can cause you to bully other people. And so...
Well, wait, let's back up. So what were your experiences with bullies? Do you remember the scenarios, the things that happened? Did they call you names?
Yeah. So a lot of the times, I never realized it was bullying until I thought about it later on, and I realized, well, that probably wasn't very nice. They didn't mean it in a nice way. There was one time that we were walking outside to play outside, and one of the bullies that I had came up with the idea of a song called Billy the Baby. And I thought, hey, that's pretty funny. They're probably laughing with me because they think it's funny. But I realized later on that them as a group were laughing at me and not laughing with me. And it just never...
tears down your soul.
Yeah. It makes you just want to, sit down and just let it all out,
It's like upsets you, and you think that you're worthless, and you think that, no one, and when you're a kid, I think that everything feels like it's the end of the world, and it's going to last forever, where it doesn't. But in those moments, you think, I feel so bad. Nobody likes me. I'm not worth living. You have all those different feelings. And, for Billy, as a mom, watching him go through that, and, there's that mama bear side that just wants to go and really kick some butt, and but obviously they're children and you can't do that. And so my recourse was going to the school and talking to, it was after school care. Well, the first bully you had, I had told you to tell them, I feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
For, I'm sorry that you're going through whatever.
Well, and that reminded me of that one time I was telling you guys that he actually had been, from what I saw, he had been having a stern yelling at this bully, and I realized, well, his parents don't seem like the nicest people, so maybe he's taking out that anger that they have on him onto me.
Right.
And that made me realize, that made me put it into perspective that he's more of a human than I really think he is. And it let me forgive him a little more. Of course, I didn't forgive him completely, because there's other ways to handle that sort of stuff, talking to somebody else about it or whatnot.
Well, and after, 3 years with so Billy talking to the bully worked the first time. The second bully he had, it continued for a good solid 3 years. This kid bullied a lot of other people, the other parents I talked to, and when I would say things to the after school care, it just continued on, and then he's in the same class with him. I would talk to the teacher, nothing would ever be done. So eventually I got to the point where I went to the principal, and the principal had said, she was unaware of any of this, and she went to the parents. Well, the parents actually texted me directly and had, felt bad, and they had never known this was going on. So obviously we'll never know if any of that's true, but I can only believe that maybe in that sense I probably should have gone to the parents and tried to work with them, because if they didn't know, what can you do? If you don't know, you'll never know.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my way of dealing with it, and it worked in that sense. But day to day, the kids have to go to school, and they have to feel comfortable to come home and tell you what's going on, which you don't always, because you feel maybe sad or lesser, or
they make you feel less self-confident.
Right.
He always made fun of my body because I was a chubby kid, and that would take a toll on me. And now that I'm in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that bumps up my self-confidence. Being in a sport that I enjoy now, that totally boosts my self-confidence. I just had to let it wash over me, let it fizzle out, and eventually it all went away, and I don't have that built-up stress or anger or worry anymore about that stuff. I just, I realized, he was a different kid, I was a different kid, we didn't get along very well, and you just have to move on with it.
Well, and then there's bullies that are sometimes your friends. You had a friend that stole from you, and I've had friends that actually stole from me, over the years, that obviously those aren't really your friends.
Yeah.
It's another form of bullying.
Yeah. They start off good.
Yeah.
And they make you think, well, he's a nice guy. There's no way he could do something wrong like that. And then somehow they always prove you wrong.
Yeah.
You just gotta, I always think back, and I should have thought, I should have taken a step back and been like, what is their primary motive? What do they really want out of me, instead of let's go spend money, and I'll cover for you or something like that. It should have been, you have your own money, you spend it, and that was that.
Well, and I think with kids it's hard to decipher those feelings, to know what's really making me feel this way. Why are they doing this? They're my friend, or and so hindsight's always 20/20 to go back and look at things.
Yeah, and it's always, I think, the first time, you never realize, because you've never had this experience before. It's your first time having this experience where, someone is acting as your friend, and then they end up tearing your life down or something crazy like that. That's never happened to me, but that's an example of what could happen.
Jealousy is big with bullies.
Yeah, it's just, I just now, if they try to be my friend, and I realize later on that they have a weird sense, to them, they have a bad vibe, I try to break things off. But, earlier in my life, if it was like, oh, they have a weird vibe, I must just get used to them or something like that, that's the wrong way to go. If you feel something off about them, there's probably something that's going to be off about them.
Well, I think too.
Yeah.
So another thing to think about is that bullies need people to be there for them. There's usually a reason why they're bullying whether they're unhappy with themselves, whether they have no friends, whether they have, you know, it's a wide variety of things. But you can't put yourself at risk. It also, you know, you can't be used, you can't be, so I think it's important to note that you can still be there for someone and, you know, in an emotional sense or whatever, and let them know that you're a friend, but without being taken advantage of.
Right. Don't let them take advantage.
You don't need to be, you know, hanging out with them all the time. But they, you know, they need someone, you're there. And it's a hard line to figure out where that stops and ends, but it's
eventually you just have to realize, you know, you have to, it all paints a clear picture eventually that, whoa, they are a totally bad person and they're coming from a bad area. And for me, the worst part was, you know, letting them go. The you know, it's always like, oh, but they were still a friend at first. Maybe they can change and be something else, but they never change, you know. It's in their blood that they're this kind of person to be rude, and they were raised this way to be this kind of cold-blooded person.
Yeah. So, another thing is that when the bully becomes the bully, which happens, it's happened to me and Billy both, unfortunately.
Yep.
So I remember, well, when I was little, there was a circumstance where everybody made fun of a little girl, so I made fun of the little girl. Yeah. And it's, you know, obviously one of the biggest regrets of my life. Like, in my case, I didn't do it to her face, which isn't any better, but these people need people to be there for them, not someone to be mean. And I felt awful. I had the sinking feeling always in my stomach, and it never felt right. And I think that's a big red flag right there.
Yeah.
And then one time at Billy's school, I went to pick him up and they needed to talk to me. And at this time, Billy had bullied another kid. And he was so upset with himself, in tears.
I felt terrible.
The after school people had said, you know, he's pretty much beaten himself up. And I remember riding home in that car that day and just saying, I don't understand how you could do this to someone when you know how that makes you feel. And I think in these scenarios, sometimes it's a group.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're just following what everyone does, but you need to be the leader, not the follower. And I think that sometimes you're bullied so much that if you don't have an outlet, you become the bully. Yeah. It happens a lot.
Yeah. I like to call it a mob mentality or sheep mentality, when you're, you know, the overwhelming majority of people have this thought, and you just want to follow that because you think it's cooler, because everybody else likes it, or, for example, the bullying or whatnot, and you know, you are sitting there one day, and all of a sudden a bunch of guys are ganging up on this girl and saying, oh, you're so ugly or something like that, and these guys are, you know, maybe an older grade ahead of you or something like that, so you want to try and get in good with them, so you join them, and you realize later on, it's always going back and looking back at it, that you totally regretted doing that, and it's not worth it in the long run to do what that needed to be done or whatnot, you know.
Be the leader, not the follower. Be the one who, if somebody thinks you're not cool for not joining in, then those probably aren't your friends.
Yeah.
You don't need to be friends with them either, you know, like you got to pick and choose your friends, and you'd rather have one great friend that appreciates you and builds you up than a whole bunch of other friends that are just there and tear you down, whatever.
Yeah. It's just breaking apart from that mentality that, oh, they're cool, so I should join them. You have your own thoughts, and I feel like that's what people should learn to realize, you know. You got to follow your own thoughts. It's what you care about and not what others care about, you know. If you like a certain clothing brand and someone doesn't, then and it's like the majority of people that don't, you just do what matters most. Maybe eventually they'll come to realize, oh, that piece of clothing was really cool. I wish I could get it, but now, you know, it's not there, and they think you're cooler now because of it.
You do you and what makes you happy.
Yeah.
You knew what I was going to say.
I did.
Yep. So I'd like, as a teenager, Billy's thoughts. I didn't have social media when I was younger. So I'd like to have Billy share some thoughts on things he sees on social media with friends or whatever that involve bullying, and maybe could help other parents of what to watch for with their kids.
Well, what I see a lot, and especially even with people way older than me, is that somebody will post something, or somebody will be having a conversation with someone, and they'll accidentally say the wrong thing because they're thinking in the moment, like, that guy got in trouble in, what was it, the K-State guy, he got in trouble for saying something racist, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that I see all the time, that people can just screenshot on their phone and post it all over the place.
You're talking about taking things out of context.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And then, the apology's already too late if someone apologizes after that, you know? You just gotta...
What about with your friends? Do you see people being mean on social media? I know you're not on Facebook or things like that, but...
Well, I think I've picked a pretty good group of friends. Most of my friends don't, try to be mean or anything. I've seen a lot where a lot of the guys will be intimidating online or something like that, just to, cover their back in the future to make sure that someone doesn't try to take advantage of them or something. But a lot of the times, it's the worst that I see with the screenshots. But I also see, people purposely exposing themselves, like taking drugs or something like that. And later on, I mean, right there, you could get arrested for that. Yeah. There's evidence right there that you have that. And so it's just, I always make sure to not say things that could be taken out of context. Recently I've been getting into a lot of debates with a few of my friends because...
Backstory, Billy's dad is a police officer.
Yeah.
And so, as you know, right now, the tensions in the world aren't always so supportive of police officers. Yeah. And I believe that we need more good police officers. Mm-hmm. We don't want to run off the good ones that we have.
Right.
And Billy's dad is a cop, so obviously Billy supports police. We all do. But go ahead,
Well, and I agree with those people that there's bad cops, but there's bad people in every job.
Every profession.
There you could be a corrupt, government politician or something like that. You're a bad guy, and I just feel like the people that say ACAB, all cops are bastards and whatnot, they think that they always try to explain it to me that the system that they're in is corrupt, which in my opinion doesn't make sense, but I don't have that other side,
Right.
There's stuff that other people have experienced that I haven't seen for myself, so I can't ever put
But the biggest thing since we're on bullying, is that it's not right for people to say your dad's stupid, your dad should quit, your dad should, all the horrible things that they say to you. First of all, your dad's not on the chopping block, your dad's a good guy. That's not your problem. And as friends or acquaintances or schoolmates, they're doing the same thing that they're trying to avoid doing, know?
Yeah, I always, they're always like, you shouldn't target one group and whatnot, systemic racism is still around, but they target those cops.
Yeah.
And if I try to defend myself...
And they're targeting you as a son of a cop, and you have no choice in this matter.
Yeah. And if I try to defend him at all in any way, I immediately get called a bootlicker. I've heard it so many times. It's just something I've got to get used to now. The majority of people, I feel like, that I know support ACAB and all that stuff. And I try to be friends with them, but some of them don't. Something changed in their head to make them not want to be, to be so far gone, so far on the left-hand side that they just, they don't want to be friends with me anymore.
Yeah.
So,
okay, kind of wrapping this up, I mean, moral of the story is, I think the majority of us will get bullied at least once in our life.
Mm-hmm. For different
reasons. How you take from it and how you learn from it and how you deal with it are what will set you up for the rest of your life. So as a mom and, you know, a person that's been bullied, I think the biggest thing is communication with your kids. If they say nothing's wrong, something's wrong. You know, as a parent, something's wrong. You try your best to pull it out of them, and then you take the steps from there, you know, like try to deal with it with words first, and try to bring the teachers involved, and, you know, all those things, try to follow the proper steps. And then as a kid, you know, what are some takeaways you could give about your thoughts on bullying? And
once again, thinking back, I wish I would have been, you know, a little bit more open about what was going on. I think it was stupid of me now to try and be like, oh, everything is fine, I don't need help or whatever, and then I would go to school the next day and be ridiculed for things I can't control, you know? Like,
and then you come home angry, and it's like, well, I know what's happening.
Yeah, and I'm always mad at you if it happens, and that's just something that I wish I would have changed, and I wish I would have taken it more into my hands a little bit, trying to report it to teachers and whatnot. I just kind of passed it off, and then you always hear that, you know, it bottles up, and there was those days, you know, I'd come home in tears because I was being bullied, and it was just, you know, it's always that hindsight. We said it a lot this time around, and I'll keep saying it because I wish I would have looked back more, would have given more of my opinion on what's going on,
and I think another thing too is you as a parent want to hate the bullies, and even as a kid too. But there's probably something going on with that kid. There's probably a lot behind the scenes that no one will ever know. So how you deal with it and how you deal with them is also very important. And maybe maybe that kid needs help. Maybe that kid there's a million different ways, and starting out to find the answers for both sides. Stop being mean to my kid, and hey, what's wrong with you? You know, like trying to, those two go hand in hand. And, you know, because I really had moments of bad thoughts and anger, and I kind of had to put those aside and really think about the best way to handle this. And, you know, hopefully it was right, and he seems okay.
Well, and I think it's just eventually, you know, like, if it's some things that can't be controlled, you're just gonna have to, I personally felt like some of the things I had to learn the hard way, you know? I had to learn that singing silly songs about me is different than singing songs that are directed towards, or saying stuff that's directed towards harming me, you know, mentally, and I had to learn the hard way that sometimes friends aren't there for the right reasons. Crazy stuff like that, and I'm glad you're there, and you've helped me very, very much, and I don't know where I'd be without you.
Thank you. So we'll wrap it up a little bit. The thoughts behind all these shows is, you know, we want it to be fun. Not everyone's going to be this serious, but also we'd like to cover topics that could help. You know, I used to be a single mom, and could help a single mom either talk to her kid or learn new things or whatever. So, you know, your feedback's appreciated, and
we're here to share our experiences, and we're always open to hear your guys' experiences.
Yes.
And if you guys have topics that we want to talk about, that's always appreciated too. We're here to tell us, you're here to tell us, and we're here to tell you, you know.
Do we cover puberty next one?
We might. It just depends.
Okay, so that's where we'll leave this, and we thank you all for being here with us and listening to us, and hope we can help someone out there. All right.